Me that there's nothing that the coronavirus doesn't touch.
All the Black Lives Matter demonstrations.
Oppression is brought out.
So unfortunately, because I just feel like we're going down this road, we've been down this road before.
Things like we've had
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Your Voice. My name is Gabriel Renu, and tonight we pay a tribute to Richard Okorogheye, the young man whose body was found in Epping Forest last week. Richard's death has been treated as unexplained, and police do not believe at this stage that there was any third-party involvement. A forensic post-mortem took place on Wednesday the 7th of April. The cause of death is pending whilst further investigations are carried out. However, it found no evidence of physical trauma or assault. Before I introduce you to my guests, I have a special message from Honourable Abike Dabiri Erewa.
On behalf of the Nigerian Diaspora Commission, on behalf of the government and people of Nigeria, please accept our deepest condolence on the death of your son, our son, Richard. I know that no amount of words can console the family, particularly the parents and the immediate family, but we rest assured that we share your pain and grief. One of the most difficult things for any parent to raise a child. So we pray that the Almighty God grant Richard's soul eternal peace. We also pray that the Almighty God console the family. We in the Nigerian Diaspora Commission will do everything to work with the family to ensure that Richard's, though short stay on earth, his legacies will live on and he will not die in vain. May Richard's soul rest in perfect peace, and may the Almighty God be with the whole family at this point in time. He lived a short life, but he touched many lives. Richard, rest in peace, and the Lord bless and console the whole family. Accept our deepest condolence.
Joining me in the studio this week are social political activist and campaigner Councillor Susan Jumoke Fajano-Thomas, solicitor Jennifer Obaseki, and radio presenter Patricia Wharton. Thank you all for joining me. Jennifer, what is the process when it comes to a missing person?
Well, what should really happen is, no matter the amount of time that goes by, if you feel that the person is missing, you can report to the police the fact that the individual is not found or your concerns. People are under the wrong perception that somebody has to be missing for 24 hours. Right. There is actually no minimum period. And depending on the person's situation, background and circumstances, it then falls on the police to assess the level of risk that that person is facing, right, or the person's vulnerabilities. Right. So sadly, in this case, it appears that the representations being made by the family as to risk and vulnerabilities were not assessed in detail, but we're yet to see exactly what the police are going to say with regards to that.
Right, okay. So Susan, would the police have done more in terms of, intervening early enough in this particular case?
Oh, thanks very much. Can I just start by saying my sympathy goes to Richard's parent. It must have been a very difficult time for the family at this point. Going on to your question in terms of police protocol, Jennifer mentioned when something like this happens, when either an adult or a child, when they're missing, the police are meant to, on the first visit, or even before the first visit, they're meant to have done an assessment. And that assessment will have either low, medium, or high risk. Right. With what Richard's parents, mom, have told the police, immediately they meant to have put Richard's case to be a high risk missing person.
Right.
Which meant...
And why would they have done that?
Because Richard was vulnerable.
Sure.
He suffered from a sickle cell. He's been shielding,
Right.
being home for even the NHS regarded people that are shielding. They address them as vulnerable people within the community. Right. So that is an alert bell to say something needed to have been done in terms of review, in terms of assessment. And I believe at this stage, I'm waiting for the award with police on a daily basis. I'm waiting to see what the outcome of the investigation will be. But just looking at it, I think there was a sort of failure at the beginning of it.
So Patricia, as a community, could we have done more, or could we do more when it comes to missing people?
I think, Gabriel, thank you for inviting me to the show. Condolences, of course, go out to the family, heartfelt condolences. The condolences don't just come from myself as an individual and a community leader. They come from the community at large.
Right.
And some may say that, of course, there are other instances because Richard is our son and a number of our sons are missing from time to time. I think, however, in this case, I think that community have been instrumental in encouraging the upscaling of the police input. Because when I was called out by the community, they were saying, Patricia, this family needs your help. And when I went to see the family and I interviewed the family were very distressed about the lack of support and the level of insensitivity that they received from the police. What was very profound and very paramount was that the community were all coming together. There was a number of social media posts that went out. I recorded an interview with Mum, whilst Dad was there also. This video probably attracted about 4,000 views in a very short space of time.
So what prompted you to do that video?
What prompted me to visit the family? Because, Gabriel, I'm very much somebody who, I live in the community. I'm part of the community. And I'm a parent. I'm somebody that works with children and families, and I have done so for 30 years. And part of the radio station, the Chalker Community Radio Station, we're all about keeping the community connected. So this isn't the first time that I've been called out, but I can't really say there was just something about this particular case. And I think everybody in the country knows Richard. It is a tragedy that he lost his life at such a young age, but his name will live in the community for a very long time. So I felt compelled as a parent, as a community leader, and somebody who had a duty of care to my son.
Right. Thank you. Jennifer, before we came in, we were talking about the reasons why, people go missing, especially young adults. And you were kind of sharing some views. Can you just share that for the people at home, the various reasons as why people, people of a certain age go missing? It's
quite concerning when we look at the statistics where you see that BAME children, that's children of, from ethnic groups, are twice as likely to go missing. And these go down to various reasons, and it's not just children, it's just double in general. So those under the age of 18, again, we represent in so much higher numbers. It's deeply concerning. Some of the factors for younger people at the moment tend to be financial pressures, unsettled homes, financial instability within the home, pressure from gangs, and other social pressures. But when it comes down to adults, there are other factors, again, mental ill health and finances, relationship breakdowns. And the thing is, with Richard, he was on the cusp. And I must say that being such of that age, a young adult, but deemed an adult, it was not really looked at. His vulnerability wasn't appreciated, maybe, and that's a concern.
So even though Richard's parents' mother was trying to explain that, did you think the police took that on board, or did they just treat him as an adult who just went missing?
Now, there lies the factor that they have to answer at the end of an inquiry. How did they take that information, and did they not give it the subjective and proper weight that they should have given it, because this was a young person, not a fully flown, experienced adult.
Sure.
And he obviously had made movement, but those movements were not traced.
Right.
Why not? Why was there not a more immediate response? Why was what Mum was saying to the police, why was it not taken and given sufficient weight?
Right.
His illness, his age, his not just physical vulnerabilities, but his mental vulnerabilities at the time. All of these factors that were being presented didn't seem to be given the sufficient weight or acknowledged in the right manner.
Right, okay.
Had they have been, we might have a different outcome. But this is the more important reason why we need to see the report. Was the officer experienced? Was the officer trained? These are questions that we as a community have. We should have minimum professional standards from police when we have such reports.
Yes, I'm going to come back to you. But Susan, you mentioned, that you work with police on a regular basis, and you talked about day 1 and day 5, and before we came on, we were talking about the various terminologies when it comes to day 1s, because for Richard's family, day 1 is the day they can't and they're able to get to him. So from a police point of view, what is their day 1, and sometimes it's that day 1, because if they don't act quick enough, could they have, if they acted quicker, could they have kind of been able to find Richard in time?
Yeah, I think, thanks very much. This is Jennifer know more about this as a brilliant lawyer. But this is one of the areas of our legislation in this country, police protocol, that we need to revisit. Why do we define the 48 hours? Why do we have to wait 48 hours before the police declare someone missing?
Right. But just for clarification, you can actually declare them missing at any point. However, you can actually...
They need to start their investigation after 48 hours.
Just hold that thought. We're just going to take a short break now, but please join us again for part 2, when we'll be taking a closer look at sickle cell disease and which affected Richard throughout his life. See you soon.
We understand what the journey is about, how it can sometimes take a little distance to bring us a little closer together. With ways to save more when you send more, World Remit is here for you, so you can be there for them.
Sure Advanced Protection offers you double the protection at 72 hours, outlasting the leading antiperspirant and giving you the confidence you need to take on every challenge. Our best ever protection in an aerosol. Sure Advanced Protection, it won't let you down.
Care wildly with £10 off your first order at bloomandwild.com.
I got 3 pairs of glasses for less than I paid for 1 pair previously.
Get prescription glasses from just £6 a pair at selectspecs.com.
Lovely people, I colour my hair because it makes me feel super fresh, and I've been using the Tresemme Colour Revitalise. Boom! It makes my hair look vibrant, professional quality, but without the price.
Tresemme, professional quality for your salon at home.
Tresemme Colour Revitalise, available at Tesco.
At Tails.com, every dog gets their unique recipe from over 1 million possible combinations. Try your dog's recipe now with 50% off your first box at Tails.com.
Welcome back to Your Voice, which is dedicated to Richard Okorogheye, whose body was discovered in Epping Forest last week. Richard suffered from sickle cell disease, which ravages so many young people in the black community. Before we get back into the main discussion, I want to share with you the first part of a conversation I had with Mr. Alvin, who himself suffers from sickle cell disease.
My name is Mr. Alvin. And cool, we're talking about sickle cell. So sickle cell, how do I cope with it? I think, me personally, I would say I've done okay with it. I think I personally have kind of learnt my triggers to a degree where I can say, all right, cool. If I'm feeling a certain type of way, I won't go out, I won't do certain things, so I won't end up in a crisis. Quickly, before I get into it, a crisis, for those who don't know, is basically it's when your blood cells become crescent shaped. So we have crescent-shaped blood cells, unlike normal whole blood cells, and they can become sticky and like a sort of clot. Basically, they kind of clot together within an area, which causes a sickle cell crisis, which is pretty much a very excruciating pain. Everyone has different ways of describing it, but I would just say it's super painful. And I guess the best way to put it is that I've actually heard from a lady who has sickle cell and has had a child, and she said that it felt worse than childbirth, which shocked me because I haven't been through that. But from her to say that, but for me personally, yeah, like I've been alright with it. Yeah, been alright with it because I live with it, of course. But essentially, yeah, I've learned to kind of make sure I drink as much water as I can, stay as warm as I can, which in UK is very, very hard. Soon as I get a crisis, I do my best to use the painkillers I have at home to sort of like attack it head on straight away first course. So like even the other day, like I felt one coming in my arm, immediately just, ibuprofen, cocodamol, stuff I have at home. Do my best to handle at home before I go into the hospital. Because, I mean, sometimes UK care can be a bit awkward, so yeah.
Still with me in the studio, I have Councillor Susan Jumoke Fajana Thomas, Jennifer Obaseki, and Patricia Wharton. And joining us virtually via the internet, NHS Engagement Lead, Sickle Cell Society, Iyamide Thomas. I'm going to go straight to you, Iyamide. Thank you for joining. For the benefit of those at home, what is sickle cell?
Firstly, can I just sympathize on behalf of the Sickle Cell Society to Richard's family for the tragic loss of their son. Sickle cell is an inherited blood condition that causes severe pain known as a crisis. It causes anemia and organ damage. It affects the hemoglobin in your blood, and people with sickle cell have a sort of hemoglobin that changes its shape to a round sickle, like a curved cutlass. That's where it gets its name from. The round blood cells change to a sickle shape and cause all blockages throughout the blood vessels, which causes all the pain.
Right, okay. So how can the sickle cell how does sickle cell get diagnosed?
Okay, it's by a blood test, but a specific blood test. They have to find out what it's a blood test known as electrophoresis, because some people think if they do any blood test, if they haven't told them they have sickle cell, then they don't have sickle cell.
Right.
But it's a specific blood test,
right,
which gives your hemoglobin genotype.
Right.
And people with sickle cell have anemia, have SS. They might, if you're told you have SS, that means you have sickle cell anemia, but there are different types of sickle cell.
Right, okay. Right, okay. So, Patricia, is part of the reason why the response to the police, was it because they didn't have enough or they didn't understand the vulnerability of Richard being the sickle cell?
Okay, I think first and foremost, as you heard Susan say, that they hadn't put him in the right risk category.
Right.
So it could be that they weren't aware of the sensitivity and the urgent need for Richard to be found, have medical care and attention. However, Mum did explain that. So even if you're unaware of the condition and the complications of it, Mum explained that. And so Mum knows her son. Sickle cell is not something that you just get. It's something that you've lived with. You're born with it.
Yeah.
So at 19, Mum has a good sense of what that means for Richard.
Sure.
And she tried to give that information. Well, she gave that information to the police.
Right.
She didn't try, she gave that information
Right.
to the police.
Right.
I think the community are quite angry, which is the feedback that's come to me about the response, as I mentioned earlier. And we're not so sure that we feel that it is just about the fact that he had sickle cell and that they didn't understand that.
Right.
I don't believe the community feels that at large. We think it's something more than that.
Okay, which leads nicely on to Jennifer. So I hate to say this, but do you feel like race played an important bit, knowing fully well that a couple of weeks before that, we had the case of Sarah Everard, which the response was slightly kind of different to what we had now.
So
Does race play a key?
We have to ask that question, especially when we've had a report that says that there's no longer discrimination in the UK.
Right.
Why was she not heard? Was it what she was saying? Was it the fact that the person that she was speaking to wasn't trained? Was it the officer's maybe wrong assumption that probably he's out having fun, or it's county lines, or it's he's probably out partying? We don't know. That's why this report is so important. Right. That's why their explanation as to why Mum was not heard, why the response was as shambolic as it was and delayed. We will hear that in that report, and then we'll be able to have a better understanding. But in my personal opinion, do I think it was race? I believe probably assumptions were made, and they need to explain, if it wasn't race, why did they make those wrong assumptions?
Right, okay. So Yamide, do you feel, based on your experience, do you feel the community as a whole actually has an understanding, well, especially in the hospitals, do you think they understand what sickle cell and some of the symptoms of it are?
The society was formed so many years ago to try and raise awareness, and we're continuing to raise awareness. I don't think we won't stop raising awareness, because there's still places where if they don't see a lot of people with sickle cell, some health authorities still don't know about it. But we do do a lot of outreach work. Obviously, the COVID-19 has put a stop to that, but we're doing a lot online as well. The police were mentioned. I mean, in the past, we did work with the police, the Black police organizations who want their colleagues to know about sickle cell. But there are areas where they still don't know about it, and there's all the stigma associated with sickle cell. So the people who have the condition sometimes don't even want to say they have it. And you are your best advocate as well of your condition. You should tell people. You see, there's a bit of a stigma associated with it, and we're trying to remove that.
Right, okay. So do everyone that experiences sickle cell, do they have to have a blood transfusion, and what does that entail?
No, not everyone.
Right.
We always say that two people with sickle cell can have the same type of sickle cell, say sickle cell anemia, and one person will probably be in hospital all the time and another person won't. It's a very variable condition amongst individuals. Even as an individual, you can have bouts of very severe pain and then go for ages without having a crisis. So the blood transfusions are given to people to try and stop that crisis, and also to prevent strokes. Because young people can get stroke from sickle cell, and that's one of the prophylactic treatment they give to try and prevent strokes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So before the break, Susan, we were talking about some of the fact that the day one for the family is completely different from the day one for the police, and you were trying to explain that process and why it's important to kind of revisit that and make sure that for missing people, it's important that they get the intervention right.
Yeah, thanks very much. It is very important, as I mentioned, as you just said, the day one for the police was at that point where that person was declared missing as an adult, which usually after 48 hours. And that day one of the things they meant to do is to visit the home where that person was missing. And that will include a thorough search from where the room to the garden, to any outer house and all of that, to establish two things: that the person missing has not left any note to point to the police and the family to the direction of what has happened to them. And the second one was to just establish that that individual is not within. We've had people that went missing. At the end of the day, they were found in their basement. They were found hung in their garden. So those are to rule out that. And after that, what meant to have happened in Richard's case meant to have been a high risk, put in a high risk category. And when you put a missing person in a high risk category, what that meant is an officer, a dedicated CID, will be in charge of that case, which, when it's a low risk, is just the duty officer that is working on it. Right. And that case will be passed to the next duty officer without anyone having an oversight of the case to escalate it to review. It seems that is what has happened.
Okay, thank you so much. That's the end of part 2. Join us after the break, where we will be finding out more about the challenges of having sickle cell disease in lockdown. See you soon.
We've missed you guys, honestly. Tried to style it out, but...
This is so nice. Be even nicer on the sofa. It's only Josie and Mark. They look fine. But you can't always tell with COVID, can you?
I'm just going to go grab some blankets.
As we gradually come out of lockdown, meet outside. You're much safer in the fresh air because COVID-19 particles are blown away. Let's take this next step safely.
So Moorish.
Moorish, Claire, because it's Bourbon vanilla from the Sava region in Madagascar, which has a particular microclimate that gives the pods more flavour. What's more, Robbie, farmers pollinate the vanilla flowers by hand.
Any more?
Oh, so much more.
No, more ice cream.
Oh. Yes. You get so much more with Carte d'Or.
They said it could never be done. That plant-based food will always taste like plants. They said even your name makes no sense, and we must sacrifice it all. The vegetarian butcher says, sacrifice nothing.
Were you cold called or advised to transfer your company or work pension? Or promised a tax-free lump sum or better annual returns? If you said yes and moved your pension, you could be owed thousands. And we think talking is the best way to find out. So for a free consultation with our friendly advisors, call 0800 151 2621 or find out more by visiting 0800pension.uk today.
USwitch customers can now switch energy in as little as one click. What you do while you switch, well, it's up to you.
Visit uswitch.com.
Anywhere you there, not me and you go there. Anywhere you there, after not there, I go there. Yeah, cause my one in a million. Whether broke or you get all the million, I go there by your side, I don't go leave you wrong. Yeah, cause my happiness on you, my phone. Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to Your Voice. I'm Gabriel Renu. This week we're remembering Richard Okorogheye and discussing a disease that Richard suffered from and that a foundation in his name is hoping to provide support for. But before we get into the main discussion, I want to share with you part 2 of the conversation I had earlier with Mr. Alvin.
Having sickle cell during lockdown, I think it's been half and half. For me personally, it's been all right because I've been indoors. So I think staying indoors allowed me to just almost remain as healthy as can be. I weren't out. I didn't need to go out in the cold. I was in the warmth. But one thing it does play on, and a lot of people don't realize, is your mental health naturally. Because for some people, you're staying at home and then you're going to get blood transfusions. So you're tired, you're coming back, you're not really doing nothing. For some of us, like in the entertainment industry, obviously, it's been hard in that aspect. And I think the reason why I say it plays on your mental as well is because naturally it's like, I mean, it's good that you're at home, you're able to stay warm, but where it plays on your mental is just the other things, like you're on medication and you feel like, you're getting certain letters talking about how you're high risk and, you're like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. You kind of feel like put in a box just a little bit more, essentially. So yeah, but overall, I don't know how a lot of people feel, but for me personally, being in lockdown has kind of been okay in terms of just at least like keeping me indoors, keeping me at home, keeping me kind of rested. So it hasn't been too bad, if I'm being honest.
Please welcome back my studio guests, Councillor Susan Jumoke Fajana Thomas, Jennifer Obaseki, virtually via the internet, Iyamide Thomas, and please welcome close friend to the Richards family, Olayinka Shobiton Solomon. So, thank you for joining, by the way, Olayinka. It's one thing to suffer from sickle cell. It's one thing to have sickle cell in the pandemic. And I know you probably know people who've kind of, have experienced it. You probably know Richard as well. Yeah. So what was that like, in lockdown, suffering, going through, having to do sickle cell and do blood transfusion? What was that experience like?
I think that would have been difficult. Obviously, lockdown was a difficult time for everybody generally. And I think maybe not actually being able to, communicate or come out of like your one box, and being able to, as before, the lady before said that there's a stigma around, sickle cell, so people don't tend to openly talk about it. So not being able to openly talk about it is one thing, and then being on lockdown and then having to go to hospital. If you think about how hospital dynamic has changed since lockdown as well, and then people not actually in hospital being aware of it as well, that's like 3 different things that you have to, like hurdles that you actually have to get over before you actually get, treatment or help. So yeah, I would have said it was definitely a difficult time, and that for him and the family. So yeah.
So Iyamide, why does sickle cell actually have a stigma attached to it?
The main reason is that people think it's exclusively a black disease, which it's not. You know, but it predominantly affects people who come from malarial areas. That's why it affects many black people who come from Africa, near the equator countries around where malaria is. It affects Indians and Mediterranean. And so, there's this whole thing about it's a black condition and there are myths around it being a curse and all. I can spend all day telling you about all the myths associated with it, sadly. And people have to think that it was nature's way of protecting against malaria. So I try to use that to remove the stigma. I mean, when I give talks, I always tell people that, look, it was nature's way of protecting against malaria, because people who have the trait, just one copy of the sickle cell gene, have a certain protection against malaria. Not totally, it doesn't mean you shouldn't take your malaria tablets, but please, yes, it just means that people with the trait, have a certain protection against malaria.
Wow, that's quite interesting, Jennifer. So because I remember growing up as well, and people who had sickle cell, there's such a cultural stigma attached to it, and Iyamide's eloquently explained some of that. But now that I listened and I heard all of that, it's kind of did you have any sort of stigma? Did you cultural experiences with people, or did you have family members who were going through similar?
Well, I'm also a trait, so. It's one of those things where people had always sort of said, well, you always have to check who you're with, always make sure. And at the same time, unfortunately, within any ethnic group, there can be harmful traditional practices and there can be cultural stigmas. And sickle cell still does, despite the level of education and informed civilized societies we live in, they still feel a little bit, let me say, excluded, feeling that they've got that additional issue that might not let them fully integrate or be fully accepted. So unfortunately, there is still some cultural stigma towards people who have sickle cell. And I would say there's a lot more information, there's a lot more ability to get tested.
Right.
So there is that ability for people to make informed relationship choices. But often people fall in love because they are in love, not necessarily because they've got the right genotype.
Right.
So we will come past these cultural stigmatization or horrible names that make people who have sickle cell feel excluded.
Yeah. So do you think it's improving, Susan? Do you think people, are more accepting towards people who have sickle cell and now embracing and they're getting the right help? Do you think that's improving now?
I would say yes. In particular, if you live in this part of the world, if you're not living back home in Africa, it's quite people are, because of the awareness people like Iyamide are doing in the community, people are actually learning more around sickle cell, and people are like Jennifer, yes, I'm a carrier, my children are all carriers. So it is something that we need to do more in our community around stigma, and we need not just stigma, but to educate people on sickle cell, raise awareness, to get people to understand the disease more. It is a lifelong disease that the only cure is either stem cell or a bone marrow transplant.
Yeah, because I remember before the advance of health, we had a lot of, they had in Nigeria, where I'm from, it's like, a lot of children have died as a result of sickle cell. A particular one that also always stands out for me is the late Chief MKO Abiola, if you remember him, who was running for the presidency in 1993. He had lots of siblings who passed away before him, and he was actually like number 10 or number 12, and they had to kind of give them names because they've embraced it, and his name was Kashimawo, which is let's be looking, because he might be another one, and that's how much the culture has embraced people, with sickle cell, and they just have accepted these sort of things, and I think you rightly pointed out it's important that we kind of, things are beginning to change in this part of the world.
Absolutely. I'm from the Yoruba-speaking part of Nigeria. What you just described, they called people with sickle cell abiku.
Right.
That they can die at any time.
Right.
That is the stigma back home in Nigeria.
Right. Okay.
Can I just say there's also a bit of stigma here? Sometimes social services. I've known of a woman who moved outside London after being displaced, and when she kept having crisis, unfortunately, she wasn't given proper support.
Right.
Her children were put into foster care, and they actually were going to push for them to be permanently removed.
Wow.
Not realising that if she was back in a community where the doctors had a better level of treatment and understanding of the treatment, then she might have been weller or more of better health, and she would have more support from her community. So again, when people who have sickle cell are displaced or put into communities where the healthcare is not familiar with how to help them manage their condition, it can also be a problem.
Right, okay. So Iyamide, are there stigmas attached to sickle cell?
The stigma?
Yeah. In this country?
Oh, yes. Yes, well, I was speaking mainly of this country, to be honest. There is, indeed, and we have to get the label away that it's a black disease.
Right.
I work with the screening program, the sickle cell and thalassemia screening program. They screen all newborn babies. They offer screening to antenatal and newborn screening. And you put up the card with the sort of diagram.
Right.
And people who carry the trait, if a couple both carry the trait, there's a 25% chance at every pregnancy their child would have sickle cell. So there is an NHS screening program for sickle cell. But I want to get back to treatment, because I think your previous speaker mentioned the fact that not everywhere knows about sickle cell, so they don't offer the right treatment. The Sickle Cell Society, we've produced standards of care. These are publications which are for adults, and we just produced pediatric standards of care. And that's a publication, it's on our website, which really is to guarantee that no matter where somebody is in the country, they will get that minimum approved care. So please, the Sickle Cell Society website has those books. You can download them. If we were in the office, you could order them, but at the moment you can just download them. And they've been produced for health professionals, especially those that don't see sickle cell too often.
Well, thank you so much. That's the end of part 3. Join us after the break when we'll be discussing the foundation that Richard's family are setting up in his name. See you in a few minutes.
Hi guys, staying safe I trust. Around 1 in 3 people who have COVID-19 have no symptoms, mean it's easily spread to our friends and family without us realising. As restrictions ease, we can keep ourselves and our communities safer by taking a free rapid test twice a week, even if you don't have symptoms. It's so easy, millions of people in England are already taking part. To find out whether you should get tested, go to the nhs.uk website. So take care and keep social distancing.
Morning, team.
Morning, boss.
Oh, those look good, Jan.
Thanks. Oh, more secret ingredient, Dev.
Oats.
Yes, oats.
We've finally done it.
With nearly half the sugar.
And they still taste great. I think we can put that down as a Grey's idea.
Grey's Oat Bites, with 45% less sugar than the average cereal bar. That's a Grey's idea.
Sure Advanced Protection offers you double the protection at 72 hours, outlasting the leading antiperspirant and giving you the confidence you need to take on every challenge. Our best ever protection in an aerosol. Sure Advanced Protection, it won't let you down.
Select Specs, they're amazing. 5 stars for my best glasses ever.
5-star value, 5-star website and the 5-star service. This is my 3rd pair of Select Specs and there'll be many more.
My 5 stars were for the quality of the glasses. They're beautiful, the frames are lovely and I'm very pleased.
Get prescription glasses from just £6 a pair at Select Specs, the online optician with over 27,000 5-star reviews. SelectSpecs.com.
Care wildly with £10 off your first order at bloomandwild.com.
It's here. The 4-track EP from MC Fizzy. Black Champagne. Featuring tracks Done Out Here. Fiasco. And the track featured on the DMX mixtape, Get It, and more. Got something to humble you, I make you somersault. Available on all platforms from Friday, 16th of April.
Welcome back to Your Voice. We have been discussing the recent tragic death of Richard Okorogheye, and in this final part of the program, we're going to discuss the foundation which Richard's family is setting up in his name. Please welcome back one last time Jennifer Obaseki, Olayinka Shobiton Solomon, virtually via the internet Yamide Thomas, and please welcome for the last section Richard's father, Newton Christian Okorogheye. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Newton, and I really appreciate you taking time out in this sort of tragic, and my condolences to your family. Do you have any words you'd like to share with us, quite quickly?
Well, it's still a tragedy,
right?
And the heart is taking it.
Sure.
And whilst we are here, we're still discussing about him. Brings me happiness.
Right, okay.
I'm very happy about this.
Well, thank you. We're going to be talking about the foundation that you set up shortly. But Yamide, how do organizations like the Sickle Cell Society support families that are suffering from sickle cell? Or the families who their children or members of the family have passed away as a result of sickle cell?
Well, I'll tell you what the things we do, the society, because we're a charity ourselves, so resources aren't too forthcoming.
Right.
Especially in this COVID year, we haven't been able to do all our fundraising.
Right.
But the main things we do really is education, lobbying and research. and support and advocacy. It's more advocating for families to make sure they access the right services. Our CEO has reached out to Richard's family and spoken to them. And we will be, trying to raise more awareness of what has happened to him and the other chap as well. Okay. So we also support children with sickle cell. We have an annual children's holiday. Okay. That's one of our things that still exists. Some of the things, like the educational fund, sadly had to be dropped because of resources. But we still, and our welfare fund. We used to have a welfare fund, but again, resources has meant that we don't do that anymore. But we still do a lot of activities for children. Okay. Which they go on a free holiday every year, and we did that online this year. This past COVID year. Okay,
so Olayinka, you're involved with setting up the charity on behalf of the Richards family. Could you tell us a bit more about the foundation? Well,
Sorry,
Ron.
Thank you, everybody, as well, for all their support and just all the love and the flowers. It's been amazing, all the love from the community and family and friends and people who live within the area. Basically, with the foundation, reason why we're setting it up, first of all, is to create more awareness, to let people know that this is happening, and there's places that young adults, young people can go to. Like within the foundation, we want to be able to get people, mentorship, be able to have forums where discussions can happen and more awareness can happen, and going out into the community. And hopefully maybe, I know as a trait, I used to have a card that said thalassemia trait, and I also got a rare blood type, which means if anything was to happen to me, if it was, say, God forgiven, having that card just makes the, the professionals, ambulance, nurses aware, and gives them a bit more chance of what they need to do for me. So I think with the foundation, the reason why we're creating it is to create awareness for sickle cell, for the trait as well, and also for, depression and mental health. And to say that, lockdown was a big eye-opener in literally bringing, I think, people back to like real community and seeing what's happening, because once you are, I suppose, away from the outside world, that's when things really make a difference, or when things happen behind closed doors, I should say. So I think, the foundation is just going to help, more awareness, and also a place where people can come and get support, can have mentorship from other people who have sickle cell, and also maybe more awareness for people to carry cards or wrist things so that people are actually aware of it.
Sure, so, that's good, good stuff. So, Newton, I just really want to kind of remember, Richard in a good light. What was Richard like as a young adult?
He's a very quiet gentleman. Right. Yeah, and he loves people around him, and he has a big life in front of him. Right. That really killed me. But again, we're still holding on. Right. Yeah.
Right, cool. So is there any more we could do, Jennifer, as a community in terms of, supporting during this pandemic? Because, Olayinka said, the lockdown's been a real eye-opener, and it's kind of reversed people back into the community, and it's just kind of reigniting that community spirit.
As a community, I think that the one thing this pandemic has shown is that we are vulnerable. Yeah. We are vulnerable on so many more levels. We're higher to die from COVID, we're more likely to go missing. We have a high prevalence within the mental health emergency response services. So the fact that we have our Sickle Cell Society having funding cut during this time that there are so many stresses on those who are suffering with sickle cell, just shows that we need to push harder. We need to be more invested and outline what is needed, the additional things that are needed, because we are that little bit more vulnerable. If it was a Caucasian woman who might have had thalassemia, who had a history of mental health illness, would the response have been different? I don't know.
You're leaving that hanging.
I'm waiting for the report.
Yeah, I beg to differ.
So Yamide, how can the community support a society such as yourself that are doing great things by creating that awareness? Because I know we were talking earlier about people have this stigma or believe that it's a black disease, but it's not a black disease, which you've just rightly, eloquently corrected. However, because a lot of people don't understand the disease and it's only kind of associated with the ethnic minorities, and hence the reason why they think it's a black disease. Because we took a look at the case of Evan Smith, I beg your pardon, you know, the coroner recently said that the care he was being given was the wrong one. You know, and is that because of lack of knowledge?
That exactly, and we, with the society, is going to be investigating and speaking to North Middlesex Hospital about that. We've put out a statement on our website as to what we'll be doing regarding that, because that should not have happened at all. Nobody should be ringing 999 from their hospital bed. Right. So again, if people go on our website, they'll see what the society plans to do about that. But just to mention also around mental health for people who have been shielding, and it's affected people who are clinically extremely vulnerable, which the sickle cell individuals were put into that group. So you can imagine just going out for your transfusions, but worried that if you go to the hospital, you might actually catch COVID. I mean, that was, if you don't go, you stand to get ill at home. If you do go, you're scared of catching something when you're out there and you're vulnerable. So that was something that was affecting people's mental health quite a lot, you know, and in fact, some people phoned up, they were scared to go for their treatment, you know. So we've been trying to get more psychologists within the hospital setting. There's some places which have hematology wards, which have psychologists who can talk to, you know, people with the condition, but not everywhere has that. But we are pushing NHS England for that. And we had a mentoring scheme, because when people talk to their peer group, you know, we had people with sickle cell mentoring other people with sickle cell, you know, to say, look, we're living with this condition and with, you know, this is what we're achieving. That helped quite a lot. And we're trying, that was around Hackney, but we're trying to spread that. But it's all to do with resources. But yes, you know, and I hope the foundation will work with the society, because, you know, we've been there for 40 years.
Right. So, well, you guys need to work together.
We'd love to. So, even people, anyone out there who has any skills that they can lend to, you know, support, and just, yeah, we're open for it, and definitely, that would be a good, I don't know what to
Yeah, because I know it's kind of early days, but, you know, it's quite important to kind of be able to kind of understand some of the things. I know you've mentioned it before, that you're going to look at people with sickle cell, as well as look at mental health as well, because I mean, let's be honest, I mean, a lot of the discussion as a result of COVID is that, you know, a lot of people are going to have a lot of mental health issues as well, you know. So how are you going to kind of be able to kind of deal with that within the foundation?
I think for us, it's like I said, any like mental health, you know, people who have mental health skills, you know, doctors, counsellors that can, you know, lend a hand and just give advice, that'd be great as well. Sure. I mean, I have a history as in handling mental health, because my ex had it, so, and I was in the system, and so...
When you say in the system, what did you mean by that?
The thing with mental health is, unless you're harm to yourself, which means committing suicide, or harm to me physically, which means almost harming me and hurting me, there is no response. They come out and you literally have to be on your deathbed. And I've experienced that. My partner, my ex experienced that. So that's something I would like to have a look at as well within the rules. I know each borough, each council is different, but within my borough, it was like, basically, unless he's doing certain things, when they came around to have a look at him and check, it was like, oh, he's fine. And it was like, we can't do nothing. We can't send him to hospital. We can't get him counselling unless he's critically, and he almost died before they actually came in and did what needed to be done. And, you know, he went under, you know, mental health care, was sectioned a couple of times. So I have a very strong opinion on it, and I have I have a lot of experience in that, and I think it's a really important thing, our mental health and our mental state.
Absolutely.
And to get to that extent, I think it's wrong to wait for someone to get to that extent, because sometimes it's too late by then. Now you're on medication, now you are in the system. Now you are going back and forth into hospital, and that's your life until the end of your life.
Wow, wow. We've only got a few minutes left, Iyamide, but I just wanted to ask you just very quick question. Do you find that a lot of people who are suffering from sickle cell are also experiencing mental health issues at the moment?
Yes, with the lockdown. And even before that, in fact, one of my very first clients when I joined the society was suffering from that. And his condition was because he blamed his parent for passing it on. And he was really psychologically affected by that. So there's so many issues around living with a long-term pain condition.
Sorry, that's all we've got time for. It's just a short period of time. So, well, that's all we have time for on this edition of Your Voice. I'd like to thank my studio guests, Jennifer Obaseki, Olayinka Shobiton Solomon, Newton Christian Okorogheye, and Iyamide Thomas. And of course, to my earlier guests, Councillor Susan Jumoke Fajana Thomas and Patricia Wharton. And thank you for watching this special edition, remembering Richard Okorogheye. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, only on Yanga TV. Look forward to seeing you there. Until then, good night.
It seems extraordinary that there's nothing that the coronavirus doesn't touch.
All seen Black Lives Matter demonstrations.
Oppression is brought out.
So unfortunately, because I just feel like we're going down this